Welcome to the Thursday stream. I'm hoping everyone's having an awesome Thursday morning. Hey Heat, how's it going? Hey Bemius, how's it going? Up early, I see. Hey. Mars Emotes, how's it going? Hey Zoo, how's it going? Good to hear your voice. I appreciate that. Thank you for hanging out here today. How's everybody doing? Really quickly, folks, a thank you to Invincible Queer for the follow, for the offline follow. I could have sworn they were following before. And Marlon Typhus, thank you for the offline follow. Of course. Alright, last time we had like a weird issue with OBS, so hopefully I can see chat on this side. Alright, cool. Alright folks, we definitely have quite the amount of headlines to cover, so let's go ahead and get started. There's some headlines that I missed yesterday, which I think are important. Due to climate change, we have the vast majority of today, or a good chunk of today, I should say. A good chunk of today is climate change related. I know that yesterday there was a panel on Universal Discourse's channel, and I'm hoping, actually on the subject, I'm hoping that we can get something going to where we have a kind of like a monthly thing where we can get an expert or a climate scientist, somebody who is in the field using or handling the data to come on the show and kind of like talk about what they do and talk about what they do and the state of affairs. Cute Among Us Stuffy before we get into the bad news. Yeah. Thank you. We got a few characters back there. We've got Yoshi, who's inside the A Difficult Truth mug. We've got the Cyan from Among Us. We've got a Shedinja Pokemon card. We have a Baby Yoda pop figure. We need Bayla. I think she's still in the midst of moving, though. Yes, she was definitely one of the people I had in mind to kind of have like a monthly discussion with experts or with people who are handling or in the front lines of like climate change and stuff like that. Yeah, definitely Bayla came to mind. And I mean, it could even just be a once a month kind of thing. Great mug. I'll be sure to wrap mine up well for my move. Drew, gotta protect that. Oh man, one day we'll have our own little house, yeah? One day. Alright, folks. Ecocide movement pushes for new international crime, environmental destruction. A growing number of world leaders advocate for making ecocide a crime before the International Criminal Court to serve as a moral line for the planet. True, I agree with this. In fact, we already kind of have this. We kind of have this in Costa Rica. It is a severe penalty to if you get caught damaging the environment in any way, shape, or form. It is a severe penalty, and I think that this needs to be kind of like the international norm, as climate change isn't just here, it's the entire planet. In 1948, after Nazi Germany exterminated millions of Jews and other minorities during World War II, the United Nations adopted a convention of establishing a new crime so heinous it demanded collective action. Genocide, the nations declared, was condemned by the civilized world and justified intervention in affairs of sovereign states. Now, a small but growing number of world leaders, including Pope Francis and French President Emmanuel Macron, have begun citing an offense they say poses a similar threat to humanity and remains beyond the reach of international criminal law: ecocide, or the widespread destruction of the environment. True. The Pope describes ecocide as the massive contamination of air, land, and water, or any action capable of producing an ecological disaster, and has proposed making it a sin for Roman Catholics. I mean, hey, I'll take it. But the point being is, I think that there should be some type of international... Well, there has to be some type of international coordination where there could be an appeal to the international court, and there has and provide consequences for the destruction of the planet, the destruction of crucial ecosystems that keep us alive. Moving to New Mexico on Saturday, nice. I hope all goes well. Yes, true. The cost associated with trashing the planet needs to be the cost associated with trashing the planet needs to be paid for. Exactly. So the point being is that there are certain handful of countries that do this. It should just be an international thing. The Pontiff has also endorsed a campaign by environmental activists and legal scholars to make ecocide the fifth crime before the International Court in The Hague as a legal deterrent to the kinds of far-reaching environmental damage that are driving mass extinction, ecological collapse, and climate change. Yeah. The monumental step, which faces a long road of global debate, would mean political leaders and corporate executives could face charges and imprisonment for ecocidal acts. I mean, yeah. Yeah. To make their case, advocates point to the Amazon, where fires raged out of control in 2019 and where the rainforest may now be so degraded it is spewing more climate-warming gases than it draws in. At the poles, human activity is thawing a frozen Arctic and destabilizing the ice sheets of Greenland and Antarctica. True. I mean, there have been there are sections of the Amazon that are under threat of becoming savannas, and that's a huge problem in terms of like the Amazon ecosystem. That's a huge problem.
Urgent pleas to save the rainforest as the Amazon burns. One NASA...
Yeah, just to make sure, in case in case we get DMCA'd. NASA scientists say most fires in the Amazon were intentionally set. That's not good. Back in 2019. Across the globe, climate change is disrupting the reliable seasonal rhythms that have sustained human life for millennia. Yeah, that in and of itself would be like a massive red flag, right? You're disrupting the weather patterns and seasonal rhythms that farmers depend on, that fishermen depend on to feed us. Okay? Just saying. Hey Wing, how's it going? The Green Party just won power in Greenland the other day, the first win for the Green Party. Wow. Hundreds of species probably went extinct, not an exaggeration. No, it's not. There are mining companies eyeing Greenland pretty hard right now, so happy to hear that the Green Party got a win there. Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. While hurricanes, floods, and other climate-driven disasters have forced more than 10 million people from their homes in the last 6 months. That's the last 6 months, folks. Welcome to the new normal. That's the last 6 months. 10 million people. Just as a perspective. Oh my goodness. Alex, how's it going? Recovering from a breakdown? Well, that's good to hear that you're recovering. And I'm glad you're okay. Hoping to be back streaming tomorrow evening. Great, that's good to hear. Everybody, all of you here, please, if you don't already, go follow twitch.tv/Kezbox and show Alex some massive love tomorrow evening. Need to cover the violence rebooting in Northern Highland. No one else will. Wow, I didn't even know about that. Tomorrow, what time will you be streaming? Hey Dustin, how's it going? Coming to the US soon. Grandma and grandpa moving north out of Arizona to Mexico in search of water. Yep. That's true. That's quite possible that will become a reality should things continue. About 8 to 9 my time, so 3 to 4 Eastern. Gotcha. The Troubles 2.0 have started. Wow. Oof. Good day. Hope you're doing alright, Dustin. That doesn't sound good. A bus was petrol bombed yesterday? Yikes. How long have I been saying this is gonna happen? I have heard you mention that before. Need to go shopping. I hate going out. True, same. $20.15. Oof. Well, yikes. Fossil fuel pollution has killed 9 million people annually in recent years, according to a study in environmental research, more than tuberculosis, malaria, and AIDS combined. Again, folks, this is going to be, if things continue, this is going to be the new normal, yeah? 1 in 4 mammals are threatened with extinction. For amphibians, it's 4 in 10. Damage to nature has become so extensive and widespread around the world that many environmentalists speak of ecocide to describe numerous environmentally devastating hotspots. Chernobyl, the Ukrainian nuclear plant that exploded in 1986 and left the now deserted area dangerously radioactive. The tar sands of North Canada, where toxic waste pits and strip mines have replaced 400 square miles of boreal forests and boglands. Yikes. The Gulf of Mexico, site of the Deepwater Horizon disaster that killed 11 people, spilled at least 168 million gallons of crude oil into the ocean over 87 days and killed countless marine mammals, sea turtles, fish, and migratory birds. The Amazon, where rapid deforestation encouraged by Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro prompted Joe Biden during his presidential campaign to propose a $20 billion rescue plan and threatened the Brazilian leader with economic sanctions. True. The campaign to criminalize ecocide is moving from the fringe of advocacy into global diplomacy, pushed by growing recognition among advocates and many political leaders that climate change and environmental causes are tied inherently to human rights and social justice. I mean, yes, it is tied to human rights, I think. You kind of need that to live, okay? You kind of need air, water to live, yeah? You kind of need these ecosystems to be healthy for you to be able to live. For all of us to be able to live, no matter where we are. The efforts remain a long shot and is at least years from fruition, international environmental law experts say. Advocates would have to navigate a political tension over whether national governments or the international community have ultimate control over natural resources, and they'll likely face opposition from countries with high carbon emissions and deep ties to industrial development. Yeah, I think that it should have, I'm not sure what's easier, if it's just like allow the nations to control their own resources, however, have a international body kind of like define the rules and in terms of like what is okay and what is not okay to do in terms of environmental damage, right? Which is driven, which should be driven primarily by a team of climate scientists, right? That's how the policies should be dictated. The environmentalists must also figure out how criminal law would address climate change, which has been driven by practices like burning coal and gasolines that are not only legal but central to the global economy. Yeah, you gotta start moving away from these things. Stop giving them subsidies. The campaign to make ecocide a crime, however, is about more than law. Jojo Mehta, who launched the Stop Ecocide campaign in 2017 with Polly Higgins, a Scottish lawyer who died in 2019, describes it as a moral and practical issue as well. We use criminal law to draw moral lines, Mehta said. We say something's not accepted. For example, your murder is not acceptable. And so simply putting mass damage and destruction of nature below that red line actually makes a huge difference and will make a difference to the people that are financing what is going on. Yeah, I mean, again, like the primary example is Costa Rica. The primary example is Costa Rica. They have specific laws. It's enshrined in their constitution that you cannot do X, Y, and Z to the environment. And if you do, there are penalties for this. Hey, Careless Whimper, how's it going? Hiya, hiya. It should be a system where we can unelect people, not necessarily elect them. I mean, yeah, there should be an option to recall any elected official. I think that that should be kind of like a default setting, right? Just like how some states have the ability to recall officials, like California, I think that that should be like a default setting. Scott W. Badenoch Jr., an American environmental lawyer who favors the criminalization of ecocide, used the term to describe the state and fate of the Earth. Ecocide is now endemic all over the planet. The structure of ecology that held up living organisms on Earth since time immemorial are collapsing everywhere, he added. Ecocide is now frankly the process that we are living in on Earth. True. The concept of ecocide was born out of tragedy. Over a period of 10 years, the US government sprayed 19 million gallons of powerful herbicides, including Agent Orange, across the countryside of Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos to expose enemy sanctuaries during the Vietnam War. The dioxin-laced chemicals defoliated verdant jungles and caused cancers, neurological disease, and birth defects in people living nearby. While the numbers of victims is disputed, Vietnamese groups claim that there are more than 3 million. In 1970, Yale biologist Arthur Galston invoked the destruction to call on the world to outlaw what he called ecocide. More than 20 years later, the global community came together to form the International Criminal Court, which was formally established in 2002 under a treaty called the Rome Statute to prosecute genocide, crimes against humanity, crimes of aggression, and war crimes when its member countries, which currently number 123, failed to do so themselves. Early drafts of the Rome Statute include the crime of environmental destruction, but it was removed after opposition from the US, the UK, and Netherlands, based on various concerns, including that it wasn't precisely defined. Instead, it was relegated to a wartime offense that was never enforced. As a result, the international criminal law includes few guardrails to prevent peacetime environmental destruction. There's a big gap and something needs to fill it. Yeah, I agree. We currently cannot hold big corporations or big governments accountable for ecocide, so what do? We name and shame, that's all we've got. Yeah. Yeah. Decades of oil extraction in Nigeria by subsidiaries of the Royal Dutch Shell, for example, have contaminated the air, ground, and water in parts of the country with benzene and other toxic pollutants. According to the UN Environmental Programme, civil lawsuits have taken years to wind through the European courts, and no laws are strong enough to prevent the damage from happening. Though Shell's Nigerian subsidiary was recently ordered by a Dutch court to compensate Nigerian farmers. Yeah, but that's irrelevant because the damage was already done, okay? Curtis Smith, a Shell spokesman, pointed to a corporate report that says many of the spills have come as a result of sabotage and theft, and that the company had been working with stakeholders to clean up the pollution identified by the UN Environment Program. The International Criminal Court's supranational authority would make ecocide a crime particularly powerful, said Kate McIntosh, executive director of the Promise Institute for Human Rights at the University of California, Los Angeles. I mean, it should be a crime, and there should be consequences for the people who are complicit in the destruction of our planet. However, as we've seen in certain cases, sometimes the ICC ends up being toothless, you know? Sometimes. it's all purely dependent on whether everybody wants to play ball or not, you know? What do they mean there's no law strong enough to stop them? Why do we have a system why do we have a system where someone has to write down, don't damage the environment or you'll get a punishment? That's why we have judges to judge. True. The problem is we don't care. The problem is there are significant, large, multinational interests that have stopped any efforts to meaningfully address this. Who have spent a massive sum of money astroturfing, climate change denial, lobbying. That's what it is. An ecocide crime would require the International Criminal Court members to enact their own national ecocide laws, and failure to enforce those laws would enable the International Court to step in. While political leaders and warlords have been the usual targets of the court, an ecocide crime could place business executives on notice too. That could make a difference in the corporate boardroom conversation. Even the threat of being labeled an international criminal might deter destructive corporate behavior. I mean, for PR, it doesn't look good, does it? Yeah. But like I said, they could spend a ton of money astroturfing the airwaves and making sure that and making sure that their image doesn't really get damaged. I don't know. McIntosh said making ecocide a crime would help in weak states where corporate polluters are sometimes more powerful than national government. The likelihood of any criminal prosecution taking place in that state is pretty low, but with an international crime, that's actually not a bar. Yeah, so I guess that's like good. China, the US, India, and Russia, the four of the world's top polluters, are not members of the International Criminal Court. But if a corporation based in one of those countries were to operate within a member state, as many of them do, their executives could fall under the court's jurisdiction. Yeah, I mean, that's what's frustrating here, because the US, India, Russia, China are not members of the International Court. Jesus. The push to criminalize ecocide remained on the periphery until December of 2019, when Vanuatu and Maldives, two island nations threatened by rising seas and climate change-driven extreme weather, recommended that the court consider amending its statute to criminalize acts that amount to ecocide. Our legacy, our future are at stake. Vanuatu's ambassador to the European Union, John Litt, told the court, stressing a common bond that united all the world's people. Our lives are intertwined by the environment we live in. True. Very true. What happens, and just to be clear, just because you think that climate change isn't going to happen right now to you, it eventually will come, okay? No amount of money in the world is going to stop that. Willie Misak, who has served as part of Vanuatu's delegation to the United Nations climate negotiations, that diplomats from other countries expressed shock when little tiny Vanuatu, a remote archipelago of more than 80 islands in the South Pacific, said it wanted to take on global powers and the fossil fuel industry through the courts. But the fact that corporations can continue to profit from carbon emissions that are threatening his country's future, Misak said, makes the legal case clear. True. It's not right, and this is where justice comes in. Ideally. After Vanuatu asked the International Criminal Court to consider criminalizing ecocide, Meta's Stop Ecocide Foundation independently convened a panel of international legal experts, including McIntosh of UCLA, to draft a clear definition of ecocide. They plan to publish their definition in June, at which point they hope that at least one of the court member nations, at which point, will formally propose that the courts adopt ecocide as the fifth international crime against peace. Meta said that the definition would likely require willful disregard of environmental destruction related to practices like widespread logging, drilling, mining, and deep sea trawling. True. Yeah, I think that this fits the bill, right? This is definitely a crime against peace because, hey, it turns out that as climate change bears down on us, it is a very real possibility that conflicts erupt over resources like water. Conflicts can possibly erupt over resources like food. Because if climate change progresses and if we continue down the path we are on, there's going to be a large problem when it comes to our ability to grow food. And that is a recipe. The fact that it's going to mess with our ability to get food and water is a recipe to move. Is a recipe for the path to conflict, for the path of conflict. That's not good. That absolutely fits the bill as a crime against peace, because these type of practices that are exacerbating climate change, that are accelerating at an exponential rate our destruction, are going to put us down a path of conflict, or at least it's highly possible. Yeah, it is a crime against peace. Alio coming in hot with the 16 biddies. How's it going? Good morning. Yeah, so as I've said before, it's not just that summers are a little bit hotter, or some areas are going to be hot, or some areas are going to be a little bit different. No, there's a series of domino effects that will happen, that are happening, because of our failure to address this. If we cannot see the writing on the wall, we are looking at a very, very, very rough future, to be extremely generous. The fact that in just 6 months, about 10 million people were displaced. Billions of dollars lost. Acres upon acres of destruction. That's just in the recent times. What happens when that becomes the new normal and then begins to accelerate? Yeah. How do you think those normals? How do you think those numbers will look? How do you think those numbers will look in a couple of decades? How do you think those numbers will look by the end of this decade if we don't change? We are back. Gotta walk the doggo. No problem. Worse. That's right, Sparrowhawk. Worse. Speaking of which, this is a perfect article to kind of piggyback off that. New study finds climate crisis conflicts are widespread at major banks. So, this is kind of like relating to the fact that like the International Court, if they manage to somehow pass a ecocide law legislation, all of a sudden these major banks can be held liable. The fossil fuel industry has a well-established track record of ingratiating itself with society's opinion leaders and decision makers. Yep. True. A multitude of banks have pledged to help fight climate change, but new research has shown a light on numerous climate-based conflicts of interest many bank leaders have that cast a shadow of doubt on their pledges. A study conducted by climate influence analysts for the blog Desmog found that 65% of bank directors have ties to what they termed climate conflict organizations. These ties range from working with oil and gas companies to funding lobbying groups against lowering fossil fuel pollution, to holding advisory roles at mining and manufacturing companies. The fossil fuel industry has a well-established track record of ingratiating itself with society's opinion leaders and decision makers, Jeffrey Supran, a research associate in the Department of History of Science at Harvard University, told Desmog. Having its fingers in all the pies allowed the fossil fuel industry to quietly put its thumb on the scale of institutional decision-making, helping delay action and protect the status quo. True. This is not the first time this has been brought up, by the way. This is not the first time it's been brought up. Hey, Memmius. Did you hear about the Kenyan engineer who recycles plastic into bricks stronger than concrete? Yes. Yes. I have seen that. Yeah, so this isn't like something new. There's been... I think we have even gone over this before. But I kind of want to emphasize the fact that, like, if the ICC makes climate change, or ecocide, I should say, a crime, these people would be implicit. And it also kind of proves the point that this is undeniably one of the most blatant examples of what money in politics does. This is what influence does. This is what money in politics does. In the United States, 17% of bank directors were found to have ties with think tanks and lobbying groups that have campaigned to weaken climate change measures. For example, 6 directors of JP Morgan had such ties, and the company had spent $317 billion funding fossil fuel sectors since the Paris Agreement came to be. Unbelievable. A specific group of banks have come to the forefront recently for offering billions of dollars in loans to funding the renovation and addition of Line 3 pipeline and oil sands pipeline in Minnesota. The pipeline is estimated to produce carbon emissions equal to 50 coal plants. Of the 4 U.S. banks funding its loans, JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, and Citigroup, all 4 have recently issued net zero climate pledges. Nice meme. Nice meme. Yeah, I'm sure if we'll just, I'm sure if we let the free market, um, do its thing, they'll take care of it. How does that look, John Kerry? It is very clear. It is very clear that a more heavier-handed approach by the government is required in this regard. In the topic of climate change, a heavier hand is required. Regulations, consequences. There has to be a political will to do this. I mean, I'm sorry, but like, there has to be a political will to be a political will to address this. Okay. I'm back, my kiddo. Woke up. No problem. I'm just glad you're here, alright? I'm just glad you're here. Hanging out. There has to be a political will to address this issue. I mean, yes. The individual aspect, the individual, us, our responsibility is to make sure we drive the political will to get these things enacted. That is our job. Organize. Understand what Congress is doing. That's what we need to do as individuals. We can't stop climate change on our own. It's impossible, I think. There has to be some type of political will to address this issue. So this tells me two things. One, this is a blatant example of what money in politics can do and why it's bad. And two, that climate change at some point, climate change does have an element where political will needs to happen. Correct, Sparrowhawk. Like, these things are still good. Like, these things are still good. However, you and I doing these things isn't going to change it. Now, if we had a national law where we ban plastic bags, where we subsidize the electric cars and then start phasing out gas cars, or where we had a national initiative to make our infrastructure green, that now we start talking about stuff that we can potentially do. If we can implement regulations and restrictions on banks that are subsidizing fossil fuels, fine them. With companies is putting shit in plastic for short-term profit. Yeah. And then, oh my goodness, and then lying about the fact that they can, like, and then lying, saying that a lot of this stuff is recycled. It is not. I was thinking about the plastic bottles the other day. Sure, I should try to recycle them, but like, the only reason it's a problem for me to deal with it is because company putting, yeah, exactly, and then blaming us, and then putting the onus on us to do it, to deal with their problem. But yeah, putting like national initiatives to, for example, push hemp to push hemp instead of plastic. This is biodegradable. Things like this. But that's not going to happen with just one person, you know? Like, what would be so hard about having stuff in glass and you can deposit it back when you go back to the store next time? The bottle gets sent back to the company and they literally just refill it. Yeah. So, that would be great. An initiative where we can have a, reusable stuff, but, unfortunately, we could have a national initiative to encourage that, but profits unfortunately take precedent, and that is why the free market is incapable or ill-equipped to deal with it. If I even had my own set of bottles or stuff in the fridge and I refill them based on weight at the store, I'd be fine with that. Yeah, there you go, boom. I mean, some stores do that, but like you said, it's very rare. It's very rare to have the option of doing it. I mean, we try. We try to eliminate our use of plastic. We do have glass containers, and we try to bring our own bags. If we do go to the store, we try to use our own bags, stuff like that, which is fine. I mean, that's what we can do. But I think that as a collective, we have to build the political will to solve this. Or at least a piece of the puzzle is to have the political will to begin doing regulations and national initiatives and stuff like that. And the companies that don't do it will just dominate because people will stick them because it's slightly more convenient for the average person. Yes. Which brings me to one of the other pieces of the puzzle, education. I don't think people understand the full scope of it. And not enough people, I think that not enough people understand the scope of it. And there's also an element of when people are presented with this threat, I feel like there's a lot of psychological defense mechanisms that kind of shut off any meaningful conversation. Because I mean, a lot of people, at least that I've talked to, this is anecdote Andy, but they say, oh well, it's just this thing that's gonna happen. I won't even be alive for it. But they have this thought in their head that it's just some ephemeral thing that happens, that's going to happen in some couple of generations down the line. But that's not the case. It's already happening. Right, or they'll say, oh yeah, that's just idealistic. It's like a self-defense mechanism that it triggers when you are presented with this threat, because if you actually acknowledge the reality of it, it's pretty bleak, right? If you actually acknowledge the severity of it, the grasp of it, it's actually pretty bleak. And that doesn't bode well for people, It's all good. Unless I have a ream of papers on me, 1,000% providing them with 1,000% proven remedies, they just dismiss me as being idealistic. Yeah, and sometimes even then it's but we don't have to do it right now, No, it's not radical. It's just it's just rational. It's just that the problem is we're in an era where being rational, seeing things in a full perspective, in the grasping the full picture nowadays is being seen as too radical, Exactly. People act like it's impossible to change. Reduce, reuse, recycle are all commendable things to do, but reducing consumption is the most important, in my opinion. Yeah, that's another piece of the puzzle, Rick. We have to accept the fact that this type of economic system that is ever consuming, the system built on planned obsolescence, is not sustainable. It's not sustainable. Thinking hurts, maybe feelings are better. These lazy companies have no interest in saving the planet. They have no financial incentive to do so. That's the problem. That's why I have that's why I push back against the idea that the free market is all of a sudden going to solve it. There's no incentive. There's no real financial incentive to do so. It's just cheaper to build more plastic bottles. It's just cheaper to do to burn fossil fuels because they're subsidized. That's the problem. Laughs and Rec Pod, thank you for the follow. I appreciate that. Maybe I've been watching too much Adam Curtis, but I think it comes down to atomization. I mean, there's another point to that. Just look at garbage collection day. All the overflowing carts. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Part of the puzzle is accepting the fact that this consumerist type of economy, this planned obsolescence, is unsustainable. It can't go on like this. I'm back. Hey, welcome back. Continuing off that vibe. COVID-19 hasn't slowed global warming. Earth's carbon dioxide levels highest in over 3 million years. The COVID pandemic did nothing to slow the root cause of global warming. In fact, the level of carbon dioxide in Earth's atmosphere is now higher than it's been in the last 3.6 million years, federal scientists announced on Wednesday. At that time, sea levels were as much as 78 feet higher than the average temperature was 7 degrees higher than in pre-industrial times. Greenland was mostly green and Antarctica had trees. Overall, the levels of carbon dioxide and methane, the two most important greenhouse gases, continued their unrelenting rise in 2020 despite the economic slowdown caused by the coronavirus pandemic, according to scientists from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Yeah, so it didn't even do that, okay? There was a lot of articles, and I fell for this too. I fell for this too. That were saying, hey, look, CO2 emissions have gone down. Look how awesome we did. Nope. Turns out that wasn't even true. Our consumption economy is a losing proposition in the long term. Yep, I 100% agree. Morning. Human activity is driving climate change, said Colm Sweeney of NOAA's Global Monitoring Laboratory in a statement released on Wednesday. If we want to mitigate the worst impacts, it's going to take a deliberate focus on reducing fossil fuel emissions to near zero, and even then we'll need to look for ways to further remove greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. She's talking about going carbon negative. She's talking about going carbon negative. And even if those levels did go down, to Steve Louis, the question, was it enough and why? No. Was it enough? No. Why? Because, well, the economic slowdown basically made it so that a lot of emissions were cut for a moment, but I don't think it was merely but a blip. It was merely but a blip. Exactly, Sparrowhawk TV, thank you. Exactly. Sourcing support yesterday said, like, oh yeah, made the exact same analogy, where it's like, oh yeah, let me stop the middle of my antibiotic treatment because I feel better. Exactly, Sparrowhawk. This is like saying I'm gonna stop my antibiotic treatment in the middle because I feel better. It's like, bro, you feel better because the instructions, if done correctly, are the reason why you're feeling better. That's why they always drill it into you to take all the antibiotics, that specific reason. Yeah, the reason why is because that treatment, if done the way they tell you to do it, is the reason why you feel better, is the reason why it's working. So why would you divert from that? And just one data point doesn't make it a trend. Also true. Now, what would be interesting is the long-term impact if we all, everybody that could, worked from home, and we did like a massive overhaul to reduce like our necessity for cars, our fossil fuel. That could be different. That could be different. But the reality is, it was merely just a blip. The burning of fossil fuels such as coal, oil, and gas releases greenhouse gases such as CO2 and methane, which has caused the temperature of Earth's atmosphere to rise to levels that cannot be explained due to natural factors. In the past 20 years, in other words, since anthropogenic humans did this, there's no other explanation. In the past 20 years, the world's temperature has risen about 2/3 of a degree. We're completely certain that the increase in CO2 is warming the planet, Kate Marvel, a climate scientist at NASA, told the Capitol Weather Gang this week. I'm even more certain that CO2 causes global heating than I am that smoking causes cancer. The world is already more than 2 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than it was before the industrial revolution. Carbon dioxide is called a greenhouse gas for its ability to trap solar radiation and keep it confined to the atmosphere. It is invisible, odorless, and colorless, yet it is responsible for 63% of the warming attributable to all greenhouse gases, according to NOAA's Earth System Research Laboratory in Colorado. That's right, Sparrowhawk. I mean, imagine this this statement here from a climate scientist. She is more certain that CO2 is causing the global heating than she is certain the link between smoking and cancer, which has already been pretty well documented. Imagine like how it's obviously just a illustration to show you just how certain climate scientists are about this, okay? This isn't a debate. This isn't up for discussion. The global surface average for carbon dioxide was 412.5 parts per million. In 2020, rising by 2.6 parts per million during the year, the global rate of increase was the 5th highest in NOAA's 63-year record. Jesus. In 2020, when we were supposedly shut down or whatnot. The pandemic-fueled economic recession was estimated to have reduced carbon emissions by 7% during 2020, NOAA said, but without the economic slowdown, the 2020 increase would have been the highest on record, according to Pieter Tans, senior scientist at NOAA's Global Monitoring Laboratory. NOAA's analysis also showed that the annual increase in atmospheric methane, a far more potent greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide when it comes to global warming for 2020, was 14.7 parts per billion, which is the largest annual increase recorded since measurements began in 1983. Although increased fossil emissions may not be fully responsible for the recent growth in methane levels, reducing fossil methane emissions are an important step towards mitigating climate change, said NOAA research chemist Ed Lukenke. I'm not even gonna try. TLDR, it was merely but a blip, and had that not happened, 2020 would have been even more. The numbers for 2020 would have been even worse. No coffee cup emoji? No. Oh my goodness. I think we need a I think we need a little bit of a little bit of candy. Little bit of candy.
White supremacy.
That's malarkey.
COVID-19.
That's malarkey.
Climate in crisis.
That's malarkey.
Democracy.
Victory, Lord.
Violence.
That's malarkey.
Racism.
That's malarkey.
Neanderthal thinking.
That's malarkey.
Medicare for all.
That's a bunch of malarkey. That's a bunch of malarkey.
Sir, what is Tomato Town a euphemism for? Sir, not Tomato Town.
Stop is rolling, sir.
Smoke yo ho.
True. True. These guys never go wrong. Pizza with tomatoes? I don't know what Tomato Town is. I think it's a map on Fortnite. Or it's a section of the map on Fortnite. Four-passenger luxury car with a battery 2/3 the size of Tesla, but providing longer range, up to 800 kilometers if driving in full sun. Huh. Yeah, public transport. Having good public transportation that is efficient is also important. All of these things are necessary. All of these things are necessary. So I saw this post and I kind of and this is kind of like to piggyback off what we were talking about, how the restaurant business, the fast food chains, were saying, you know what, we actually can handle a $15 minimum wage, but they poured so many resources into effectively blocking it at every single point, and now they're boasting about it. I mean, they're bragging about it. What if it did happen? If the $15 minimum wage did happen, they would be absolutely fine. Which is quite infuriating. This was just a mix. Gotcha. Look, people's lives are going to change sometime in the next few decades. We can either have some control over it and have it suck a little bit, get over the idea of having your own car and improve public transportation, or have it build up until it blows up into a more drastic situation where people are not prepared for. True. Yeah, that's right, Mersey. Incredible. Virginia is the 16th state to legalize recreational pot, latest to emphasize social equity. Virginia Democratic-controlled legislature passed a bill legalizing the possession of small amounts of marijuana on Wednesday, making it the 16th state to take the step. Under Virginia's new law, adults ages 21 and over can possess an ounce or less of marijuana beginning July 1st, rather than January 1st of 2024. Governor Ralph Northam, a Democrat, proposed moving up the date, arguing that it would be a mistake to continue to penalize people for possessing a drug that would soon be legal. True. Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax, also a Democrat, broke a 2020 vote tie in Virginia's Senate to pass the bill. No Republicans supported the measure. Democratic House of Delegates Speaker Eileen Filler-Corn hailed the plan. Today, with the governor's amendments, we will have made tremendous progress in ending the targeting of black and brown Virginians through selective enforcement of marijuana prohibition by this summer, she said in a statement. Republicans voiced a number of objections to what they characterized as an unwieldy, nearly 300-page bill that would criticize measures that would grant licensing preferences to people and groups who would have been affected by the war on drugs and make it easier for workers in the industry to unionize. Wait. The supposed party of the working class is big mad that provisions in this bill would make it easier for workers in that industry to unionize? Yikes, dudes. Yeah, no Republicans. Not one. Hey, sourcing. The party of the working class, did we get a new party in the US? No. No. Senate Minority Leader Tommy Norment also questioned Northam's motives. We have a governor who wants to contribute to the resurrection of his legacy, Norment said, referring to the 2019 discovery of a racist photo in Northam's 1984 medical school yearbook. The accelerated timeline sends Virginia's cannabis consumers in an unusual predicament. While it will be legal to grow up to 4 marijuana plants beginning July 1st, it could be several years before the state begins licensing recreational marijuana retailers. And unlike other states, the law won't allow the Commonwealth's existing medical dispensaries to begin selling to all adults immediately. Jean-Michel Padini, executive director of Virginia's Normal, called legalization an incredible victory, but the group would continue to push to allow retail sales to begin sooner. In the interest of public and consumer safety, Virginians 21 and older should be able to purchase retail cannabis products at already operational dispensaries in 2021, not in 2024. True. I mean, like, what is the point? Padini said in a statement, such a delay will only exacerbate divide for equity applicants and embolden illicit activities. Northam and other Democrats pitched marijuana legalization as a way to address historic harms of the war on drugs. I do think that, like, it is a step in the right direction to ending the war on drugs. I think that this trend that states are doing, legalizing or decriminalizing drugs across the board, is steps in the right direction. And hopefully this continues, because then inevitably it will reach the federal level. One state study found that Black Virginians were 3.5 times more likely to be arrested on marijuana charges compared to white people. Those trends persisted even after Virginia reduced penalties for possession to a $25 civil fine. New York and New Jersey also focused on addressing those patterns when governors in those states signed laws to legalize recreational marijuana this year. Northam's proposal sets aside 30% of funds to go to communities affected by the war on drugs, compared to 70% in New Jersey. Another 40% of Virginia's revenue will go towards early childhood education, with the remainder of public health programs, with the remainder funding public health programs and substance abuse treatment. Okay, I mean, sure, that works. Those plans and much of the bill's regulatory framework are still tentative. Virginia lawmakers will still have to approve them again during their general session next year. Some criminal justice advocates say lawmakers should also revisit language that creates a penalty for driving with an open container of marijuana. In the absence of retail sales, some members of law enforcement said it's not clear what a container of marijuana will be. What? What does that even mean? A container is a container. The bill specifies a category of social equity applicants, such as people who have been charged with marijuana-related offenses or who graduated from historically black colleges and universities. Those entrepreneurs will be given a preference when the state grants licensing. Mike Thomas, a black hemp cultivator based in Richmond, who served jail time for marijuana possession, said those entrepreneurs deserve special attention. Thomas said he is looking forward to offering his own line of organic craft cannabis. Being that the arrest rate wasn't the same for everyone, I don't think that business opportunities should be the same for everyone. And if I were to take the bold individual stance and refuse to use a car and people found out, they'd be more likely to just write a newspaper article about it and feel good about recognizing it and carry on as normal, which... yeah, that is true. Sparrowhawk. Yeah, so the TLDR, I think, is, the TLDR, I think, is trying to end the war on drugs, yeah? I think that moving in that direction is good. I think ending the war on drugs is good. I believe that if things continue down this trend, it is quite possible that we have a federal legalization. I mean, at the bare minimum, we should have decriminalization of all drugs. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. All right, I saw this this headline and it caught my attention, so let's see exactly what this is about. Biden's plan to overhaul tax code would close offshore tax loopholes. Okay. I don't know how that's going to be accomplished, but let's see. President Joe Biden's tax plan would hike the corporate tax rate to bring in $2.5 trillion over 15 years to fund the sweeping $2 trillion infrastructure proposal unveiled last week, according to details released Wednesday by the Treasury Department. Ambitious in scope by any means, the Made in America tax plan would raise the corporate tax rate from 21 to 28%, which I have a question here. How are you planning to make this happen when you've got rogues like Joe Manchin? Okay? How are you planning to make this happen when you have rogues like Joe Manchin? I mean, the plan is good for the most part. I think it should be a little bit more aggressive, but you need to get everybody on board. And it seems like apparently President Joe Manchin is being lukewarm at best. Ambitious in scope by any means, and it's not really that ambitious. Beforehand, it was 31% before the Trump administration, before the Trump era. It was 31%. So I don't know if that's ambitious, but okay. Establish a sort of alternative minimum tax for high earning corporations and attempt to close loopholes around offshore profits. That's a good idea. The plan would capture $2 trillion that otherwise would flow out of the country, according to a Wall Street Journal op-ed written by Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. In a speech Wednesday, Biden said his tax plan would be more fair to the middle-class Americans, a message likely to resonate with the electorate. There is clear support among voters for making behemoths in retail, technology, manufacturing, and finance pay more. True. A research survey data firm Morning Consult found that roughly 60% of American adults think companies should be paying more in taxes. True. And nearly one-third of those say they strongly agree with higher corporate taxes. At 28%, the U.S. corporate tax rate would be higher than the average statutory rate of 23.51% among the Organizations for Economic Cooperation and Development. State taxes could push an effective rate even higher. And increasing the rate of 28% when combined with the state corporate taxes would lead the combined U.S. rate to 32.34%, which would be the highest among OECD and the G7, said Ben Colton, Director of Research at Beacon Policy Advisors. And advocates who want to see the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act wholly or partially reversed, though, argue that these percentages are moot because even after the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act lowered the corporate taxes to 21% in 2017, many companies pay far less than that, if they pay anything at all. Yeah, that's the problem. The share of taxes US-based multinationals pay on their domestic profits is less than 8%, according to the Treasury Department. But that doesn't mean big business would pay that amount. Now, the effective tax rate will be lower for a lot of these companies because of deductions they can take. Eric Totter, Institute Fellow at the Urban Brookings Tax Policy Center, suggested that the existing corporate tax structure has room for improvement. Yeah, that's one way of saying it. That's one way of putting it. Did you just say President Joe Manchin? Yeah, I did. I did that on purpose. I'm good with a pure wealth tax and nothing else at the federal level applied to people and corporate entities. Alright. Yeah. Joe Manchin said he might be agreeable to a 25% tax rate, but I doubt he'll follow through with that statement. Yeah, hey folks, you remember when the corporate tax rate where it was in the 30% range and we had all of that economic stagnation? Yeah, me neither. In fact, didn't we have like an uptick in the economy? Weren't we in an uptick when all of these policies were implemented? That's really weird. Weird. My view, shared by many tax experts, has always been that it's best for the government to define the measure of taxable income it thinks is appropriate instead of relying on accounting rules that were developed for a different purpose. Some policy observers suspect that the administration never intended for 28% to be the final number anyways, noting that Biden said, "I'm willing to negotiate that." Okay. Critical Senate swing vote. Joe Manchin has said that he doesn't want corporate tax rates to be raised higher than 25%, and Republicans have been united in their opposition. Thank you, President Joe Manchin. I am so glad that somehow, some way, we have found we have found a way to make Joe Manchin the most powerful person here. Unbelievable. 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 High corporate tax rates actually encourage investment because taxes are paid on profit, not gross revenue. True. I've said this before, so and I'll say this again. You know who doesn't have this problem? Or I should say, you know who never had this problem as Senate Majority Leader? Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell never had this problem. Tucky. In 2022 election cycle, Matt had a few extra Dem senators and votes to minimize Manchin. I hope. I don't know. Ideally we would have a unified front to actually get stuff done. That's just my opinion. Tucky. Tucker Carlson defended a man accused of storming the Capitol with zip tie handcuffs, asking for perspective on how he is treated. The Fox News host on Tuesday defended Eric Munchell, whom prosecutors identified as the man pictured in the U.S. Senate chamber in tactical gear with zip tie handcuffs during the Capitol riot. The image became one of the defining scenes of the unrest of January 6th. He was later arrested along with his mother, Lisa Eisenhart, who was also accused. Wow, I didn't know that. Who was also accused of storming the Capitol. Oh yeah, hey. Tucky Boy is asking for perspective. Exactly what perspective am I supposed to get from this? Exactly what perspective am I supposed to get from this? In a monologue Tuesday night, Carlson criticized the decision by a judge to hold the pair in custody until their child because they were deemed dangerous. Yeah. I mean, yes. The decision was later overturned by a different judge, and the two were freed under house arrest last week. Neither Lisa Eisenhart nor her son damaged any property in the Capitol or committed any violence. They just walked into what we used to refer to as the people. Oh, okay. Hold on. I get it. I get it. Does anybody... Okay. Please tell me somebody here. Please tell me somebody here endured the conversation between CTV and Dylan Burns last night. Did somebody did somebody did somebody was somebody able in this chat to endure the conversation between CTV and Dylan Burns? I generally only listen to conversations when I feel like something to learn. Okay. True. I was there for a moment as much as I could bear it. I can't stand those type of conversations. I feel you. But the point being is CTV, from what I understood, from what was told to me when I was in chat, previously held the belief that the January 6th mostly peaceful protests, as he claimed, was okay. He was basically, and this all had to do with, like, you know, Suspect Sushi, and I'm sure everybody here knows. Dude went on multiple panels for some reason, was allowed to be on multiple panels, effectively as a Proud Boys PR campaign. That's what he was. Somehow he was continuously allowed to have a platform to do so without much pushback, other than when without, in other words, he was platformed and was allowed to do a complete PR campaign for the Proud Boys up until to and including defending them in the January 6th incident, where he spoke to Vosh. And he lied to Vosh. He lied to everybody, to the thousands of people that he spoke to, right to their faces, and said, the Proud Boys weren't there. The Proud Boys had nothing to do with it, bro. Oh man, we didn't even plan anything, dude. Lied. And was now arrested by the FBI for being there after going on a tour trying to do PR for the Proud Boys. Curiously enough, Twitch also has recently said that you can be yeeted for things that you do outside the platform. Curious how that happened after the whole Suspect Sushi thing came out. I don't know if there's a connection to that. I think CTV is a nice enough guy. I have never talked to him, but I was incredibly infuriated just watching that conversation go. I just don't think he's able to see beyond his own biases very well. This causes him to be dishonest. I'm not sure it's intentional, just coping with cognitive dissonance. Yeah, I mean, it was very clear, because according to what chat was saying, he was condemning the January 6th incident, but all of a sudden, he was talking about how this is the people's house, and how the cops opened the doors, and therefore everything was fine. Hey, no, everything is fine. He like did a 180, and not only that, like his logic to excuse that was, if the government fails to do its action, if the government fails to do its job, then so be it. All bets are off. And in other words, the implication is criminal acts are fine if you don't get caught, because the police, the state, the government didn't do its job. Therefore, in CTV's logic, there's no such thing as crime. There's no such thing as laws. They don't exist, technically. Which I wonder how he feels about the undocumented immigrants, since the government didn't do their job. Oh well, I guess they're here now, right? Right, CTV? Bad faith requires intent. I'm not convinced he actually was He's usually acting in bad faith. I mean, he might be just deluded into thinking that he's just right. He was boldly wrong. I mean, like, unabashedly wrong. Hey, the U.S. government dropped the ball, so therefore, okay, I'm not gonna do like, oof, TOS. Yeah, so basically, because the government dropped the ball, therefore it was okay. Which, in other words, hey, crime is okay, because if you don't get caught, the government dropped the ball. Hey, you're scot-free. And I find that incredibly infuriating to try to make those massive Olympic level of mental gymnastics because all of a sudden that involved your friend or your, adjacent cohort. I'm working from thinking about how I used to interact in these conversations. It was almost always ignorance plus overconfidence plus fear of being wrong. I mean, to a degree, yeah, but I mean, the circular logic was unbearable. Life is like an infiltrated news organization. You know, it sucks, but somehow you stick to it. No idea what that means. Hey, Anarchist Laboratory, how's it going? Come on. Oh, my bad. Oh, jeez. Sorry, hold on. Oh my goodness. Okay. Yes, there we are. Sorry about that. My point from going off on that tangent was because this is exactly the same talking point that he was using to excuse suspect Sushi's behavior. Very telling. Alright, Tucker, hit me up.
That two defendants, Lisa Eisenhart and her son, Eric Munchell, should face indefinite detention.
Wait.
Now, neither Lisa Eisenhart nor her son damaged any property at the Capitol or committed any violence. They just walked in to what we used to refer to as the People's House.
Wait, no.
And yet somehow Joe Biden's Department of Justice convinced a trial judge.
No, nobody's saying they should be indefinitely detained just until the trial happens. Wait, they're not going to Guantanamo, Tucker. Once I realized that I was often wrong about most of the things I believed because I had not actually taken the time to critically examine my beliefs, it was easy to shed my confidence in ignorance. I felt like most people struggle with the fear of being wrong. And that is compounded in public conversations. True. Broke in and crossed the police security line. Yeah, you broke the law, my dude. Exactly. Exactly, Dustin. My strong interest in science as a kid helped me quickly get over the fear of being wrong. True, that's very good. Exactly, Sparrowhawk. TLDR, Anarchist Laboratory, Suspect Sushi is a Proud Boy and ran for a while a massive PR campaign saying that it's all good, nothing's happening, and then lied about the Proud Boys' involvement in January 6th, and then now is being was arrested by the FBI.
That Lisa Eisenhart was a, quote, threat to our republic, and that her son was a, quote, would-be martyr.
I mean...
Keep in mind, these are people whose crime was trespassing in the...
I mean... I mean... Yeah. Yeah, he was a threat.
In the Capitol. We're not endorsing that, but some perspective, please. That two defendants, Lisa Eisenhart and her son, Eric Munchell, should face...
Hey, guys. Some perspective, please. Some perspective, please. Some perspective, please. Yeah, that's right. Knew he was a Proud Boy, but trying to endear them and everyone didn't know. To endear them to everyone didn't know he got picked up by the feds, though. Yep. I was raised in a hyper-Christian environment. I went to small Christian schools all the way up until high school. I didn't find my love for science until my late 20s. The goal is to... Yes, the goal is to... The goal is to get people riled up. Yep, that's true. And if you want, you can send it through the Discord, because at this time it is closer to 11:30. But you can go to the Discord and post that. You see the clip of the Arkansas governor teaching Tucker about what it means to be a conservative? No, but I'm sure that was funny. So, according to Mr. Zip Tie Man, he found those zip ties and took them to ensure that they weren't used by the police to restrain protesters. So, you were preventing law enforcement from doing their job. And what exactly are we supposed to take? Like, why, if you weren't there to really intend on doing anything, why all this tactical gear? I mean, why the vest? Seems kind of strange. Correct. Yeah, I don't know about you, but I wear tactical gear when I don't want to do anything. True. You look genuinely dumb. I think like Tucker's like default face is dumbfounded. Yeah, the reason why I found this interesting is because like I believe that almost word that the logic and the talking points from CTV were very, very close to parroting this. So I just found that interesting, especially after listening to that. Oh, good lord, that infuriating conversation. He's got a phone on the front of his rig. Just noticed. Wonder if there's any footage. Oh yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of footage around. Yeah, he just found some loose wires and didn't want anyone to trip over them. Wow, what a guy. He also just happened to be dressed in complete tactical gear for absolutely no reason. He's just, I mean, unless he's just LARPing. But even then, like, oh yeah, you see, he was gonna use those cuffs for the bad people. No, he wasn't though. He was gonna use the cuffs. He was trying to prevent the police from doing their job. He was trying to save the bad people. That was his intent. He didn't want them to be used on the insurrectionists, according to him. So, yeah, when all else fails, something Antifa. True. No, not in this situation, my friends. But yeah, incredible how, like, propaganda works, right? Incredible how, like, it's quite effective. I mean, like, from what I heard, this was basically the exact same logic and basically the exact same excuse as to why CTV was defending suspect Sushi, using this exact same Olympic level of mental gymnastics to excuse that. I just find it I just find it I want to say interesting, but I don't want to downplay it. Nefarious, evil genius type stuff. I thought he was one of the more chill chuds. I mean, he was chill during the conversation, but his explanation and his logic was basically this. And the TLDR for that one is, hey, the government didn't do its job. The government failed to do its job. Therefore, it is A-okay, and it is acceptable behavior. It's really weird because, like, a lot of these quote-unquote conservatives are all about law and order. It's bizarre. And, like, he basically accidentally made the case for open borders by saying, why should you prosecute someone over crossing an arbitrary line in the sand? He actually said that. He said, why should we be persecuting people for crossing an arbitrary line? Yeah, CTV. Yeah. What?
And first of all, these are difficult decisions.
Come on.
Brush your teeth in less than 10 seconds with this revolution.
You want to listen to the medical profession? Do you want to listen to professional counselors? Do you want to listen to parents? Or do you want to leave all these decisions to the legislators that come from all different kinds of background? Yes, they're elected to represent you, but they do not necessarily make the right judgments for parents and for doctors in the most sensitive issues.
Why are we regulating the behavior of children at all if we're allowing children to decide? And by
accidentally based governor of Arkansas? Wait. Wait. Wait, yes. Hold on. Wait, this is... Wait, we actually almost hit something. Wait, oh, so... Dude. Wait, so, yeah. My dude, then stop trying to pass anti-abortion laws. If you understand this concept, and you vetoed this law because you understand the concept of government overreach and stuff like that. Wait. You should understand. Okay. Oh man, it's just so weird because like...
By the way, I read a study today that showed the overwhelming majority of kids who do not take life-altering hormones in the end decide not to, quote, transition to a new sex. So there's a lot going on here, but I'm asking as a conservative, you just invoked Ronald Reagan as if he were for chemical castration of children.
What?
What other behavior should we not use the power of the state to regulate among kids? Seriously.
Well,
Why
you
can't they have
debate it
sex at
every
15?
time. And so, look, Tucker, you want to keep talking or you want me to answer a question?
I
Tucker,
sincerely...
Damn. Damn. Yeah. Well, we don't want to play too much of that because of DMCA, but Jesus. Accidentally based governor of Arkansas. The best part is next. Okay. I'll risk it.
Sincerely want
whenever
to
you...
answer.
Well, thank you. And so whenever you, whether it's beer for minors, these are all issues that you have to address the legislature. You make judgment calls on it, but we also try to restrain ourselves as conservatives and say we don't have to be involved in every issue. And if you want to broaden the party, if you want to get back to the principles, then let's at least think through in a reasoned way as to whether this is the right bill to interfere with parents and doctors' decisions on a healthcare matter, as you pointed out, does not have thorough research in every area. And so
accidentally
I yield to
based
that.
governor.
And whenever you look at this bill, in my
you yield
veto
to the lack of
it,
research. Really quick, 10 years ago, if somebody had said, hey, Asa Hutchinson, you're going to be governor of Arkansas, and you're going to veto a bill that would protect children from chemical castration, what do you think you would have said?
Well, just like I said today, if you're talking about a reassignment surgery, I would have signed that bill in a minute. But whenever you're talking about maybe less than 200 kids in Arkansas that's currently on hormone treatment, and they are immediately cut off without having a grandfather clause in this legislation, I don't think that's treating those kids or their parents or their healthcare providers fairly or equally.
All right. That's the conservative position. Governor, thanks. I appreciate it.
No, that isn't the conservative position. That is not the conservative position. You pinned that on the governor, but the governor is actually accidentally correct in this case. And wait, not only that, like, aren't conservatives supposed to be like for limited government intervention? That seems weird that they want to be so invested into every single aspect of life, of people's lives. It's kind of weird. It's kind of weird. But Tucker isn't a conservative, he's just a baby fash. True. Come on. Holocaust survivors launched a new campaign to show how it started with words. Sadly enough, 75 years after the Holocaust, this is a time to remind people what words can do. One survivor said, "True." Abe Foxman was a year old when Nazis ordered his parents to report to Jewish ghettos in Vilnius, Lithuania, 1941. His nanny, a Catholic, told him to leave the child with her, expecting that they would be back several weeks later. Foxman's stay with her ended up lasting years until his parents returned. He moved to America in 1950 at the age of 10, but his early life experience never left him. "I'm a survivor, an example of what good words can lead to," Foxman said. My nanny risked her life for 4 years, protecting me and hiding me and giving me a false identity. Foxman, a former director of the Anti-Defamation League, is one of several high-profile survivors to join a new campaign, hashtag It Started With Words, reflecting on the origins of the Holocaust. The campaign is spearheaded by the New York City-based nonprofit Claims Conference, which works to secure compensation for survivors from the German government. It is supported by the UN and Holocaust museums around the world, and is being launched on the Jewish community's Holocaust Remembrance Day on Thursday, which is today? I didn't know that. And as the new drive for awareness comes, as the polls show an increase in anti-Semitism around the world, as well as lack of awareness among adults under 40 about the Holocaust. The Claims Conference polled 1,000 adults in what it said was the first 50-state survey of Holocaust knowledge among millennials and Generation Z. It showed that nearly half of the respondents could not name a single one of the concentration camps or ghettos established during World War II. More than half were unable to identify Auschwitz-Birkenau death camp, and 11% believe that Jews caused the Holocaust. What? That is unfathomable. It's not like conservatives clearly, as demonstrated yesterday. Meanwhile, the FBI reported that more than 60% of religion-based hate crimes are directed at Jews in 2019, and a poll released in March by the Anti-Defamation League and YouGov showed that 63% of Jews in America said they've experienced or witnessed some type of form of anti-Semitism in the last 5 years. Around the world, it's become more acceptable to hate, demonize, and dehumanize other people, and we are seeing it now with Asian Americans. That's true. Greg Schneider, Claims Conference Executive Vice President said, "People don't wake up one day and say, I want to commit mass murder today, but it's a process that over time people are dehumanized. Yes, and that is extremely dangerous. Okay? That's how it starts. You otherize. That starts with words and ideas. True. True. Research published last month for the Center Study of Hate and Extremism at California State University, San Bernardino, showed that hate crimes targeting Asian people of Asian descent rose by nearly 150% in 2020. In a video produced for Claims Conference, the former leader of the Germany's Jewish community recalled how at the age of 4, she was one day no longer allowed to play with the other children across the street from her Munich home. The apartment manager came out and screamed at me, "Jewish children are not allowed to play with our children," Charlotte Knobloch, 88, said. "I didn't even know what Jews were." The push for the campaign came from survivors, the youngest of whom are now in their 70s, and worried that the lessons of the Holocaust are now being forgotten. There's a politicization. Lack of truth, lies abate, and there's no consensus on civility, and no one listens to each other. All taboos have been broken on respect and tolerance. Sadly enough, 75 years after the Holocaust, this is a time to remind people of what words can do. Yeah. You can't dehumanize people. You can't otherize people. Okay? You can't otherize people based on attributes like ethnicity, race, religion. You can't do that. Because once you detach people from their humanity, it becomes very easy to do whatever to them. Okay? When you dehumanize people, when you otherize people, when you separate humanity, and when you say, oh, X race, X ethnicity, X this, X orientation, is other, we can quickly find ourselves in a very dark path. Okay? This is why it's so important to understand that it's so important to understand humanity, compassion, empathy. We see how quickly these things can lead to horrifying things, you know. It's fucking wild to see the amount of Holocaust deniers going up. Yeah. Yeah. Anarchist Laboratory, Sean. Yeah. There's literally 11% of the newer generation, millennials and Gen Z, who believe the Jews caused it. Correct, Darknet. And exactly these talking points, words, China virus, have translated to these assaults and these horrible crimes. Yes, you're absolutely correct. I mean, this is the classic example right here. Right here. I know I've showed this before, but this is exactly it. And how many times have we seen those assaults where as they're assaulting the person, they call them China virus? How many times has that happened? You normalize this. They're not people. They're a virus. Do you see how incredibly dark that gets? At that point, you can do anything to them. Words matter, folks. Words matter. No one should be referring to anybody as a plague, virus, vermin, based on anything based on race, gender, orientation, ethnicity. I mean, is that not what we're seeing? Is that not what we're seeing when we hear that yet another assault happened against an Asian American because of things like this? Damn, they look so cool. Oh yeah, so cool. So macho, so alpha. Yeah. No, but in all seriousness, it's gross. It really is. I think that we do need to understand the lessons of history and how some of the worst atrocities in human history were committed on the basis of separating the humanity of others. That's how it starts. Come on. I don't know why my background music isn't playing anymore, but that's okay. Oh, there we go. Oof, sorry, that was a little bit heavy. History doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. I mean, it kind of does repeat itself, I guess, but in different ways. It manifests itself in different ways, I guess. I guess that's why the distinction is it doesn't necessarily repeat itself word for word, but it does have the same thing. I don't know. Insert the correct English language. Insert the correct English word here. So I guess that's true to a degree. Oh, I see. This was what Alex was talking about earlier. Oof. Which, by the way, if you guys want to learn more about this, I highly recommend you check them out. Twitch.tv/Kesbox. Chomsky started one of his books with that quote. I have 2 books of his. I'm gonna check it out. All right, folks. Oof. Be honest, that was a bit heavy. We need to learn to avoid dehumanizing people generally. I see people do this based on people's shit beliefs as well. While I recognize that people's beliefs are not immutable, allowing ourselves to dehumanize someone for any reason is a problem. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you're right, Sourcing. So the point is, we can't dehumanize people. We cannot separate humanity and make people other, because once that happens, we can go down a very, very dark path. And some of the worst atrocities in human history have been excused because of that. But you are absolutely 100% correct. You are absolutely 100% correct. It is problematic. Shoot, I forgot to do my daily show for myself, but it is almost about that time, so I'll take a moment. I'll take a moment to show for myself, and then we're going to raid into touring news, which I haven't seen in quite some time. I hope I gotta reach out to touring. Hope he's doing all right. We're gonna raid into touring news. Thank you guys for hanging out today. I really appreciate all of you guys being here. Thank you for all the massive support. Thank you, hey, Spread It Forward. Thank you for the massive support. Thank you, Laughs and Rec Pod for the follow. Alio with the 16 biddies. Offline follows. Invincible Queer and Marilyn Typhus. Thank you so much for the offline follows. I appreciate that. And folks, we're gonna head on over to touring news. Again, if you enjoyed the content, I'll take the second to show for myself. Thank you, Invincible Queer. I appreciate you hanging out here. Please make sure you hit that follow button. Make sure you head on over to our YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button. It really does help us out. And as always, my call to action to everybody is spread the word far and wide that this is the chillest place to be for news and politics. And was lurking, thank you. Hello lurkers, take care folks, take care Memmius. That this is spread the word far and wide to everyone and anyone you know that this is the chillest place to be for news and politics in the AM. And yeah, if you do want to support the channel, there's many ways of doing it. You can subscribe, biddies, donos, merch, all of that awesome stuff. You guys are what makes this channel grow. I appreciate all of you guys for being here. Thank you, Darknet. Thank you, Spread It Forward. Thank you all for being here. We'll be back on Saturday for Saturday, I believe, if possible. And Monday through Thursday, we do news and politics in the AM, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. As always, please stay safe. Please take care of each other. I love you all, and I hope to see you guys in the next stream. See ya! Now hang on with me, guys. Hang with me, guys, as we go to touring news. Alright, we're heading out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here we go.